What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha America, welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, October 29th, 2019. Tomorrow, of course, is Halloween. And hopefully not too much of the country is going to get snowed out for that. But apparently there is a big storm coming down from Canada. This is going to be the real start of winter when that thing hits. And we're probably going to get some of it here in Indiana, but not the full brunt the way the Rockies and everything are going to go. Anyway, getting into the news today, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room. He's ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. All right. Over the last 24 hours, more and more people are coming on out and saying they're not buying the official story of that raid into Syria, into the Idlib area. Some are suggesting that if, in fact, somebody actually was killed, it wasn't Baghdadi. It was one of the ISIS spokesmen, Abu Mohammed Salama. And as it turns out, the house where the U.S. claimed Baghdadi was living did not belong to him. It belonged to one of the military commanders of ISIS. So this one's already starting to fall apart faster than the story about the raid in Abbottabad that killed the then already dead for years Osama bin Laden here. So there's a lot of skeptical commentary out there. And the story is already mutating to try and patch the holes in it. Article over here from StephenLensman.org. ISIS leader killed, Trump's dubious announcement. And of course, what they're trying to distract from is that this group was created, supported, and controlled by the United States, and their fighters used as proxy troops deployed to Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, and elsewhere, aided by Pentagon terror bombing. And Trump's announcement was a political stunt to divert attention momentarily from Democratic efforts to remove him by impeachment or the 25th Amendment or whatever else they can try and think of. The impeachment thing is in serious trouble. And also, it's going to become a major feature of his re-election campaign by claiming that he's combating terrorism and the scourge, which ultimately was actually created by the United States. If you got to have enemies, sometimes you have to make them yourself. So, Radio Mahafazat Idlib, a Telegram channel, wrote on Sunday that the house that the U.S. claims al-Baghdadi resided in with his family belonged to the commander of Horus al-Din group, and he, and not Baghdadi, was who was killed in the attack, along with his wife and 5 children. Now, the Russian military is continuing to question the official account of the raid, saying it was not aware of any U.S. military operations in the region. Remember, Trump thanked Russia for cooperation in allowing them into the airspace over the de-escalation zone. And Russia's come on out and said, nobody even talked to us about it. And we're not really sure what happened because raids are very noisy things. And there was nothing on radar, and they're just not buying it. They don't think anything actually happened over there. Now, do you remember back when they raided Abbottabad and killed a guy who kind of, sort of, if you squint real hard, looked like Osama bin Laden? Then they dumped his body in the ocean. And they've done the exact same thing with the remains of al-Baghdadi. They call it burial at sea, and they followed all of the Islamic formalities that are supposed to be required, following this very fast DNA test, which confirms it was al-Baghdadi. And that one is also in doubt, given how long DNA tests usually take. So, remember last time with Osama, the government leaked out a whole bunch of pictures trying to make it look like Osama bin Laden was dead, which all of them ultimately proved to be fake. So this time, they're not taking any chances. All of the photos and videos of this operation, and supposedly what was left of Baghdadi, are classified. They're not going to be coming on out, with one exception. Trump declassified and released a picture of what they're calling the K9 hero who cornered Baghdadi. And apparently they're claiming the dog's name is Conan. And the dog supposedly was hurt after it went into the tunnel in pursuit of Baghdadi. So they're trying to make a hero out of the dog. Over at the Ron Paul Institute, Ron Paul is commenting on the fact that Trump once again has flip-flopped on the Syria withdrawal. He folded up like a cheap suit. He was going to bring the troops home from Syria. No, they're going to go into Iraq. Iraq doesn't want them. Well, we're going to send them back into Syria to guard and protect that oil for Exxon. I mean, to keep it out of the hands of ISIS, keep it out of the hands of Assad. So this isn't, he lied to us. And Ron Paul asks a very, very pointed question. Where does President Trump think he gets the legal or moral authority to send U.S. troops to illegally occupy foreign territory and determine what that foreign country or can or cannot do with its own resources? Because that's the bottom line. That oil belongs to Syria. Doesn't belong to the United States, doesn't belong to ISIS, it belongs to Syria. And they need that money right now to rebuild from the years of war. So Trump had a chance to bring that to an end, but I'm sure the war hawks got on out there and said, you know, if we leave, it'll be seen as a defeat. And if we lose in Syria, the wheels come off the war wagon. We won't be able to get our war with Iran. We won't be able to carry out the plan for the new American century. So it's ramping back up, and they're reselling ISIS as a terror threat. Get you all scared enough to say, oh yes, we must go back into Syria. Here, take my money, take my children. Yes, we have no choice whatsoever than to go back into Syria. So SecDef Esper says the U.S. will keep the Syrian government away from the Syrian oil. And the Pentagon intends to retain control of the oil fields and says they will repel anyone trying to take that oil with overwhelming force. This is thievery. This is brigandry. Are looking for a name for it. It's piracy. So Trump has announced his intention to control the oil and conceivably to try and take some of it on behalf of the U.S. And remember, yesterday Russia released satellite photos showing that the U.S. is in fact smuggling oil out of Syria. And apparently Trump is already talking to the majors like Exxon to go on in and harvest the oil from those oil fields. Now that's going to be a bit of a problem because Russia, Gazprom, already has a contract with the government of Syria to develop those oil fields. So anyway, Trump's plan to send the U.S. oil majors into Syria, needless to say, has sparked a great deal of outrage. And on October 23rd, the Amsterdam District Court issued an order for the seizure of 100% of the shares of the South Stream Transport BV company, which is contracted to build the offshore section of the Turkish Stream pipeline. About the oil, it's all about the pipelines and the rights of way and who gets the transport fees. That's what these wars are really all about. So Russia is saying that despite this, the construction of the Turkish Stream pipeline will be completed on schedule. So beginning sometime next year, this pipeline will deliver a combined total of 30 billion cubic meters of gas to Turkey and southeastern Europe per year, bypassing Ukraine. So another article, this one came from journal Neo, saying something stinks in Syria's oil fields, and that's exactly what's going on here. Nobody's buying this nonsense that the United States has any kind of a right to control or exploit Syria's oil. It belongs to Syria, and Syria needs the money. So nobody's sure what's going to happen here, except that this is clearly an act of war against Syria, a country that has done absolutely nothing to us. Now, a little earlier, I was saying they're trying to rebuild the image of ISIS. They need to revive the boogeyman to scare you all into going along with the war agenda. And a former U.S. NATO commander is saying, ISIS is coming back. Terror network will accelerate planned attacks after the death of its leader, and they're going to target the Christmas markets. So they're telegraphing there is, in fact, going to be a false flag. Could be Christmas, could be as early as Thanksgiving. Now, over at WikiLeaks, they had a whistleblower come forward and revealed that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons falsified their reports on the Douma bombing in Syria in 2018 to frame the Syrian government instead of reporting accurately that the attack was carried out by the Western-backed jihadists. So even the OPCW is compromised on all of this. Alrighty. Now, Baghdadi had been in U.S. custody, and Trump was saying that Baghdadi was fleeing U.S. military forces in a tunnel and then killed himself by detonating a suicide vest that he wore. The Washington Post actually came out with the comment that the fact that he was willing to detonate the vest he was personally wearing proves he was not a coward. And the Russians have come on out disputing this talk about his screaming and crying and whining, because apparently there was no audio hookup down in that tunnel. So it's just all fake. It's all fake. So anyway. All right, over in North Korea, they're starting to talk rather bellicose again, saying that the North Koreans are growing impatient with the U.S. and warn of an exchange of fire at any moment amid the stalled talks. And it comes back down to something I pointed out before. The U.S. approach to these negotiations, something they learned from the Israelis, is you give us what we want first, and then we'll do something nice for you. And that's not the way that these things get done. North Korea gives a little, then the U.S. gives a little, then North Korea gives a little more, then the U.S. gives a little more. And, you know, North Korea made a lot of obvious gestures. They shut down their missile testing site. They've done no more nuclear testing. They sent back the remains of U.S. soldiers who had been left behind in the Korean War. They opened up the DMZ and allowed families who'd been separated by the Korean War all those years ago to finally see each other after all those years. Now, yes, for the most part, these are token gestures. But Kim Jong-un is rightly waiting for the United States to say, we got to do something. You know, let's stop holding these military drills off their coast with Japan. You know, it's a big Pacific Ocean. You can have those drills anywhere. And the U.S. refuses to budge an inch. It's almost like they don't want peace with North Korea, which has been my theory all along. All right, we got some callers on the line. Kevin in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. Hi, Mr. Mike. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Hello? Okay, cool. Yesterday I called in and told you that I was on the fence with this whole Baghdadi, whatever his name is. I
Yes.
think you're right. The more that I think about this, yeah, this is staged. This I don't know who they killed, if they killed anybody, but I've seen. I went back on my phone and was looking yesterday. There's accounts of this guy dying 4 or 5 different times. Somebody can't die 4 or 5 times. Or 6 or whatever. The next comment or the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, I keep hearing about this oil, petroleum, and energy. We're all slaves to energy, and I wish it wasn't the case. But I've been looking into something, and I forget they changed the name of it. Mike Adams was talking about it, and that's cold fusion. What do you know about cold fusion?
Well, cold fusion was announced by 2 electrochemists, Fleischmann and Bonds, and the idea was basically that they'd found a way to create small-scale, low-level fusion with ordinary laboratory equipment. And at first there were a bunch of scientists who said they were able to duplicate the result. And then all of a sudden, some unknown party came on into the university where these guys worked, and they bought the patent. And that was the last we heard about it. Now, there are still a lot of people pursuing cold energy, but I think in the published description of the setup, they've left out one critical step to make sure that it wouldn't work. And meanwhile, apparently the U.S. military are playing around with it. They think it's a viable power source.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I say this loosely. One of the things that I'm on my own hobby, my hobby's physics. I like physics and electrogravitics and things like that. The thing that I would like to see, I would like to see us not have an electric bill or the flying cars. I think the technology's here, but it's just being suppressed. I mean, this is ridiculous, the type of world we're living in. It's almost, 2020 almost, and we're still using petroleum. We're still using quote unquote, dirty electricity. I mean, there's cleaner things out there, but yet they're keeping us suppressed. So they keep, and I call them the MFers, and I use that loosely as money funders. These people, that are funding the money to keep some of this stuff suppressed, and as well as keep us, slaves to this. And I know you said it before. You said it to me before. We're facing a Soviet-style collapse. Everything around us is falling apart. Look at the infrastructure. Look, California is on fire. The grids, in California. What is it? There's over 1 million people. 1.4 million people are out of power. I mean, that's third world. You know what I mean? And so, I'm big on the whole.
And say, this is the new normal. Get used to it. Be prepared for blackouts. Yeah, it is third world.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm big on this whole cold fusion thing. I'm a little curious about it. I don't know too much about it, but I think, like you said, I think it is viable. And maybe, some of these civilians out here or people like me that, find that to be interesting, maybe we ought to put our heads together and come up with something.
Well, I'd like to see it happen, but the idea about cold fusion, if each of us owned our own little power station, then the electric corporations would be driven out of business, and they don't want that to happen. The same thing with the oil companies. Oil is established big business in this country, and they don't want to look at anything that threatens their profitability. They went along with this whole ethanol experiment because they thought it was going to improve their bottom lines, and actually it has. But you're right. Anything that is a threat to the status quo is going to get dismissed, denied, ridiculed. Anyway, stay on the line, Kevin. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Kevin in West Virginia. Do you remember the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and how a central part of its storyline was that this corrupt judge and his cronies had bought up the public transportation system, the red car, and they were going to dismantle it in order to force the people of Southern California to buy cars and tires and boost profits that way. And that's actually based on a little bit of historical reality.
Yes, I do. It was a little before my time, but I have seen the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I have.
Yes.
I have. The other thing that a suggestion for you. I don't know if you've heard of the guy. His name is Joseph P. Farrell. He's got a website called thegizadethstar.com, and he gets into alternative uses of energy. And he wrote a bunch of books, actually. The ones he's famous for, like I said, the Giza Death Star, talking about how the pyramids of Giza, that they're the outer shells and could be machines. Could have been a weapon. Could have been a machine too. But I think the conversation with energy, I would like to see it being opened up a whole lot more. Besides the oil and besides renewable, there's other alternatives out here, and I just wish the discussion would broaden up more and to just petroleum and just wind, water, solar, air. There's other ways. Like I said, coal fusion. It's relatively cheap, and it's relatively what's the word I want? More bang for your buck, I should say.
Well, I'd hesitate to use the word bang, but you're essentially correct.
I mean, I just would like to see that discussion opened up. But that's all I have for you, Mr. Mike. I hope you have a great day.
Okay, but there are some online resources regarding cold fusion. You may have to go to an alternative search engine to find it now, because Google is rapidly becoming worthless as a search engine. We're talking about that a little bit later in the show. Okay, we're going to switch over to Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, talking about Baghdadi, I think a website, RBN, has it 6 times reported that they killed him, which I guess, we're supposed to forget about those reports all the time, but unless I've just been watching too many episodes of The Terminator, and it just rose up again. But, the whimpering, screaming, and crying, adding all these possibilities, I don't buy it for one moment, because in a fight-and-flight response for your life, there's no time for any of those things, especially when you have a bomb strapped to your chest and you're thinking about detonating the bomb. There's no time for any of that. So that's drama. That's Washington drama. That's trying to make Trump to feel really good, because time for any of that stuff. You get time for whimpering, screaming, and crying when you're cornered in a cage there, or in a tunnel or something, and you have no way of detonating a bomb. And they're creeping in. Maybe you might, but it's pretty unlikely, because he was the head of the outfit there, ISIS or ISIL. So I just don't buy any of that. It's just typical theater for Washington, and to make Trump feel like a hero, a superhero here. They tried that same crap with Saddam Hussein when they said they captured him. He was hiding below the floorboards or something. And I don't know why they decided to do that, to make themselves look heroic and superhero type. It's not necessary, and I just don't buy it anyway. Like I said, 6 times we've been told that he's dead. Geez, that's a pretty bad track record, but I've never heard anybody in mainstream media talk about that. So one thing I want to throw by you, I think I sent it to you today. There's an article on the RBN website, had me scratching my head a little bit here, and it actually has some credibility, and I just want to throw it by you. Maybe you can make a comment on today or tomorrow. But the article is, Snowden is either a government plant, paid actor, or MK Ultra victim. And as I read the article, it came from, where'd it come from? Blacklisted News. The source was reddit.com. He makes some the author's doesn't actually come out what his name is, but he's there's some credibility. There's something to think about on this. Because if you look at the age of Edward Snowden, a very young guy, and I understand climbing the ladder, how long it takes. Now, if you're talking about intelligence agencies, it takes a lot longer because there's a work history that has to be established. There has to be a trust history. Security clearance isn't just given to you at that top level without first proving yourself, because there's always the possibility of infiltration and spies coming into the agency, and so it takes time to reach that level. So when I read this article, I started thinking, geez, were we duped? Is this possible that Edward Snowden is really not what we think he is? We're thinking he's a patriot, he's a good guy, but then I look what's happening to Julian Assange, who's being tortured, mentally tortured and drugged up, and quite the opposite. And if you read the article, I don't know if you read it yet, but it appears that the author is true when he says that Edward Snowden appears to be very schooled on how to handle himself in talking, and I'm now looking over everything, and I'm starting to think that maybe we were duped on this one, Michael. We might not have been told the truth. This might be part of a...
We cannot rule it out entirely. In fact, stay on the line. I want to hold you over because I've got one more comment about this. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Steve Elkins. And Steve, when the Nazis were rising to power in Germany before the war, the Gestapo got a reputation for being able to hear everything that anybody said, see what everybody was doing, practically read minds. Now, the reality, of course, is they couldn't do that. They didn't have the technology, they didn't have the resources, but they worked very hard to craft that image in order to scare the German people into staying silent. So it's entirely possible that Edward Snowden was doing the same thing with us. I mean, he basically put it out there that the NSA was able to listen to all of our telephone calls. And as we pointed out several times on the show in the past, the claimed technical capabilities of the NSA outstrip present technologies, especially the part about getting anything meaningful out of all that data. So it may have been a giant bluff against the American people for the same reason the Gestapo bluffed the German people. Be careful what you say. Stay silent. We're going to hear you if you speak out. And in that context, then we cannot rule out that this whole Citizen-4 and Glenn Greenwald and all the rest of this stuff was in fact a psyop against the American people.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of disturbing to think the other alternative there, because I did believe at the time he was truthful, he was honest, he cared, he's a patriot. And now I start to put pieces of the puzzle together. I look and say, wait a minute, at a guy at this age, how is that possible? Like I said, you have to. They're on their toes, and the top brass make all those decisions. It probably goes to a panel of people who decide who goes up the ladder and who doesn't, and it's got to be based on experience, trustworthiness, ability, a number of things, and I just don't see how a 21-year-old could jump so high up the ladder so fast. It doesn't make sense. In the real world, it does not make sense. In the business world, it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, well, as you said before, when you look at the way Snowden has sort of been left alone versus how they went after Julian Assange, right. Yeah, something doesn't jibe there.
Yeah, I agree. That's it for Mike. Have a great show. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I'm suspicious of all that stuff as well, with Snowden and Assange. I think Assange obviously was right on, but, Snowden revealed a whole lot of really important stuff. So, among other things, he revealed that Israel got all the intercepts, right? The unfettered, unedited, raw intercepts. Now, I would tell you that somebody who would release that information, that exposes the deep state, the FBI, the unconstitutional, unlawful wrongdoing that's been going on under the surveillance regime for years, and a whole lot of people are now looking at it and have been looking at it that wouldn't have been looking at it without Snowden. And
well, you know, there's an old saying that, you know, rat poison is 90% good, healthy rat food, and only 10% of it's the actual lies. So they had to build up Snowden's reputation with some real tasty morsels, as it were, in order to get us to take the full bait along with the bad stuff. My question here is, if the NSA really had the capabilities they claim to have, why do we have such an out-of-control cybercrime problem?
Well, I think your other theory about that is probably apt. It's probably they're making money on it. It's probably ex-NSA people and CIA people who are contractors or who left with all the passwords and all the tools and are doing it, and the CIA gets a cut. That's as good a theory as any that I know. But I would tell you that they don't like any light shown on this at all. And the fact that the institutions that we're talking about have been outed formally as being outside the law, outside the Constitution, and you know, that in itself is huge. People really weren't looking at them as adversarial as they are now. I don't think anybody wanted to do that, or any of the people running the institutions all these years, up to and including the presidents. And the phone companies, by the way, you know, wanted that out. So, I mean, listen, Elkins has a point there. You have to question everything. By the way, he rose not so much in the CIA as a contractor that was rehired by the CIA. But at any rate,
Snowden technically was contracted to the NSA. Because the NSA built
but he also was
data
a
center
CIA
out
guy for a while. He worked embassies and some other things. Went to the NSA, so he had a lot of stuff. And by the way, was supposed to be one of the best kept secrets, right? And you don't want too many people in there. And since he had wide exposure from doing it overseas in the embassy from two different agencies, maybe he would have been hired. And by the way, he also said in his interview that I saw on Ryan Dawson's thing that the person who had that coordinating job, basically, that he finally settled into, did nothing with it before. He was some old-timer waiting to retire. And so that was not considered a big-time job, but yet he was considered trustworthy and had a background. What I'm telling you, obviously, is I tend to believe the secrets are too big. The institutions are too compromised, that he said, to have any sort of positive outcome. I mean, they're trying to live that down every day. Clapper had to go and say that he was lying. What do you think that made him feel like, right? When he lied and said, no, we're not surveilling? Right?
It could be as simple as the fact that Snowden was just very, very good at what he did. I mean, I got hired by NASA JPL right out of high school. So young people very often are grabbed and groomed and move forward, and it could be that. Let's just say at this point, we're not sure about Snowden anymore, and we're not sure about the NSA.
Mike, you're right. Everybody, I have to question everybody nowadays, but I think that the magnitude and the volume of what he revealed, I think it's way beyond what they want to reveal. And too many people, big people. If the government worked the way it should, Mike, there's a whole lot of people already be in jail. Directors of the CIA, directors of the NSA, presidents would be in jail if things worked the way they should. And that revealed everybody that was going on. And by the way, you're smart as hell, but I've listened to Snowden, and he's smart as hell too.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I tend to believe the guy, and the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I thought it was interesting, is to my knowledge, they have not released any units that did this Big Daddy raid, right?
Yeah.
The only and so what did they release as a hero? The dog, who can never be interviewed, who can never turn for money, who can never say the wrong thing. It's like the dead guy they had for the anthrax thing. You may as well make the dog the hero, and they won't have to kill an entire SEAL team like they did last time. Whatever.
Well, definitely as far as this so-called raid on Baghdadi, I'm convinced it's not what we're being told it is. I'm not convinced that Baghdadi died, that he'll turn up in another 6 to 8 months once more. But by then, the U.S. will have accomplished its objective of fortifying the Syrian oil fields and just sucking that oil out from under Syria.
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, that's right. It is piracy. It's like the slant drilling that we allowed the Kuwaitis to do prior to the Persian Gulf, the Desert Storm, Desert Fox, or whatever the hell I was in it. I don't even remember the name. But they were slant drilling, and we allowed that, and we've always been into pirating stuff. So, man. Mike, what do you think about the? I saw something today about the impeachment stuff.
Yeah.
About the vote that they had. It's a vote for impeachment that is not really an impeachment.
Yeah, Pelosi's already in thrash mode about that. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show.
Well, I'll be looking forward to I know I've taken up a lot of time. You probably have a lot of callers, but
yeah, the phone lines are really low.
Basically. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Conan the Barkinator there. What? Does anybody, Mike, remember when Trump says he died like a dog, and all of a sudden they bring out this dog, Conan. I mean, this is just beyond the pale. Come on now. And Mike, do you realize ISIS has, excavator equipment? They had diggers. They had all this equipment to dig tunnels, trenches, but yet he runs down a dead end. Only in a rerun.
And in his own base, where he would know what tunnels had a dead end or had an escape hatch or whatever. That's another part of the story that just doesn't make any sense, that it would have even started down that tunnel.
Yeah, I wonder if the same base had Stinger and tow missiles in it. I wonder how he got them there.
Yeah.
What if... And, Mike, I looked at this. I'm not going to rail on Trump, even though I'm going to have to. I didn't want to because, but my God, I saw this thing. It said 82% of evangelicals like Trump. But do they realize that he gave all this money to Saudi Arabia that hates, Christians?
Yes.
He gave, I don't know if you talked about that. He gave $4.5 million more dollars to the White Helmets, which is a propaganda tool created by the British to be used as a proxy of ISIS. They are ISIS. They are jihadis. He gave them $4.5 million more, and I want to know all these Trump supporters who still call in, believe in this dude. Okay, why? Why do you how come he didn't use that $4.5 million for all of our veterans who got issues sleeping on the freaking streets of this country? Why didn't you use it? Why is your government and Trump not using that money for them? Why would he give $4.5 million to the White Helmets when we all know, because we call in and you talked about it, and you can just go look at the documentation of the White Helmets, who they are? Why would he do that if Trump is our best buddy, or he's going to do something for us? Because as far as I'm concerned, Mike, up until this date, what's today, the 28th, 29th?
29th.
Where's the arrest? Where's the indictments? I talk about this every other day. Where's the wall? The troops were coming home, and now they're not. When are people going to wake the hell up to figure out it's BS? It's BS.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people still we've been played. We've been played, Mike. Okay, and people are still accepting to be played. When are they not going to be played? When if Trump gets in for the second term and nothing's still done, are they still going to support him? But at that point, it don't matter. Nothing's changed. Nothing is freaking changed, man. you know, and by the way, the Federal Reserve is still pumping liquidity into the banks, so that's not changed. So I'm sorry, but you know, I'm not going to vote anymore, and I had it with this charade, you know, and I thought Trump, you know, Mike, let me tell you, when Trump won, I was so freaking happy, man. I was like,
same here.
Yeah, man, he's gonna stick it to them, and they stuck it to him, and he didn't do anything about it. It's just, I don't know. I mean, what's your take? I mean, it's beyond disappointment now. It's just a fraud now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
this thing about sending U.S. forces into Syria to control the oil, followed by Exxon. I mean, there's no real way to spin that as something that America should be doing, which is why I think they're going to try some kind of a false flag blamed on ISIS to anger the American people, to get us, you know, angry enough to jump back on the war wagon saying, yes, let's go kill them all, and I don't care if it's right or wrong.
Now, is that making America great again, Mike? Stealing somebody's oil while we're not building
it's not my idea of making America great again. My idea of making America great again was rebuilding the factories and rebuilding our technology. But I guess, you know, Trump's idea of making America great again is on ending war. You know, but as Yoda used to say, wars do not make one great.
And we all thought Trump was different, but he's more of the same. Mike, have a good night.
He's worse in many ways. He's worse in many ways. Anything else, Dustin? All right, we're going to switch over to Steve in West Virginia. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I got a couple things. I want to echo what the rest of your callers are saying. I've heard last night that both Iran and the Russians are actually laughing at us. That this is such a joke and such a, you know, like a false flag op. That it's so obvious that they're laughing at us. And I just wonder, you know, I mean, how many people, you know, if you can try and step back out of your shoes and take a look at America and how both sides are pitting each other against each other and saying that, you know, the Russian agents on one side, it just looks ridiculous, man. And I'll tell you, when I travel abroad, I'm embarrassed to be represented by our government. I'm almost ready to say it sometimes. I'm a Canadian, and you know that might be just as bad. But I mean, these guys are embarrassing. I mean, the stuff they're pulling on American people. And I want to point something out too. What you said about Snowden, Webster Tarpley, when he used to go on Rents, he used to be a regular guest on Rents about every 2 weeks, and he said that a long time ago that Snowden just an op, and that's all it was. And the guy from Veterans Today said that basically Assange is what he was is an operative for the Likud party, because you have two sides of Israel going against each other. You have the bulk of I forget what they call them, but the Likud.
All right, well, Steve, I got to put you on hold. Put you on hold. We got to take another break for commercials. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Here we're talking with Steve in West Virginia and looking at what's going on in our government and our country. And, you know, at heart, I'm a pacifist, but I keep thinking back to this wonderful line from the movie Young Frankenstein by the head of the local police. And he says, a riot is an ugly thing. And I think it's just about time that we had one.
Yeah. Mike, I want to get back to what I was emphasizing, though, is the guy from Veterans Today. I know you're not really fond of him, and neither am I, but he does bring up a good point in that he says that, you know, that Israel has two sides, just like we have the Democrats and Republicans. Israel has the Bolshevik side, and they have the Likud conservative side, and the Bolshevik side is the one responsible for pushing all the transgender people, all the immoral sex, and all that stuff on us, and demoralizing our culture here. While the Likud party is like the real stringent Christian, type. Only it's a version of Israel. And it makes a lot of sense, and it makes, sense that they're fighting against each other, just like the Dems and the Republicans fight, and that's how we've ended up with some of this. And the other thing I want to ask you about, I watch so many of these people, and, they get banned from Twitter, and they go crazy. It's like their dog died, and I don't understand it. I mean, how come when Twitter or YouTube bans somebody, why can't we all just move to, there's so many other channels out there. You got Gab, why can't, we popularize that and or move to another YouTube thing? There's D-Live.
Well, I think a lot of people are simply outraged at this assault on our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of expression. And to see American corporations join with our Congress in wanting to shred the Bill of Rights, I think that's upsetting to a lot of people. And they're venting about it. Why are we being shut down just because we asked an imprudent question? Now, apparently, there is somebody who's started a court case saying that this is a free speech issue, and it's going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, one other quick, I agree with you. One other quick thing I've got, though, is that some of these people that have all these big channels on YouTube, they went in doing this as, to be outspoken and as like a part-time thing to be outspoken about what's going on in our government and to let people know what's going on. But now what they've done is they've converted it they've quit their jobs and they've converted, this thing to a full-time job. So they're beholden to that money. And if they lose that money, I think you got to approach it, where you have your regular job, do your regular job, and then come on as a patriot at part-time, and don't rely on the money. Don't think you're going to get the money.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience, nobody gets rich in independent media. All right, well, Steve, we're going to let you go. Got to do station identification. We got more callers waiting on the line as soon as we get back with hour number 2. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are at least partly open, 800-313-9443. So let's take a phone call from Jeff in St. Paul. Aloha, Jeff. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind? Okay, we lost Jeff in St. Paul. So the next one would be HB, initials only. So welcome to the show. What's on your mind? HB?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
You were short with that last caller.
That last caller apparently dropped.
Okay, I'm here. I was talking to my wife. Called in to make a comment about AOC.
Yeah.
Just appearing out of nowhere and going right to the top of the Democrat Party. But my wife was telling me that she was in something called the Young Democrats or the National Democrats or something. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, she was obviously politically involved and liberal for most of her adult life, but she was literally recruited and groomed to run for office during the midterms. And I don't think
nobody's saying that, I haven't heard anybody else say anything like that either.
Well, that's just from where I sit. That's the only thing that makes any sense because, just being in the Young Democrats does not qualify you to be a member of the Congress. And if you look at some of her thinking, some of the outlandish things she's said and done, I have to shake my head and say, is this really the best this country can do for representatives?
And how did they let Oman or whatever her name is go that far when she's such a fraud? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, they wanted to load up the ranks with, attractive upscale females because they're going to be courting the women's vote next year.
Well, yeah, but I meant the Muslim aspect of it too, but, I don't know. Well, welcome to the mainland. Oh, I was going to tell you, I've got a Muslim name if it ever comes to that. I'm going to be known as Knoxville al-Mufdadi.
Okay.
So everybody needs to give them a Muslim name.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Bob in New Jersey. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. How are you? Hope everything's well with you and Claire.
Well,
I just wanted to mention to you that there might be another way of looking at what Donald Trump did with Abu Baghdadi. To me, he was mocking the Obama's attack on Tim Osman, the CIA boy.
Yeah.
And he was already dead many years before. He died of natural causes in 2000. I believe it was December 2001. And they had the staged press event and everything, and Trump did the exact same thing. I think this was a message to the other side. And he had staged the attack while Pelosi and Schiff were in the Near East. So I think there's a little more to this story than meets the eye. I think he knew what he was doing. I think Baghdadi, the information I get, he's ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. He's Mossad all the way. ISIS never attacks Israel because they're funded by Israel, and they're funded by a faction here in the United States, an alphabet agency beginning with a C.
Yep.
They need enemies. And as for the oil, I believe he took the oil because China is desperate for oil, and they may be forced to come to the table. And I know China would have had their eyes on that oil through Turkey. So I wouldn't be at all surprised that's what it is. And as for AOC that the last gentleman mentioned, she was auditioned for a part in the Justice Democrats, which was funded by George Soros, founded by Cenk Uygur.
Yes.
And they ran 96 candidates in Democratic primaries, and their object is to take over the Congress. And it seems like they only got I think they got 7 elected.
Yes.
And but the press goes along with them as if they're the majority. That's all I have to say. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Well, I like your observation that Trump may be grabbing Syria's oil as a bargaining chip against China. We certainly don't need the oil. We've become a very large producer of oil here in the United States of America. But again, I think the rest of the world is going to see this for exactly what it is, an act of international banditry.
Exactly. Banditry it is. Yep. Okay, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are now open, 800-313-9443. Okay, getting on back to the news here. Apparently, everyone has come to the conclusion that Russiagate was a complete hoax, was complete fake, trying to set Trump up. But the Spygate aspect of it is real. And they're saying Horowitz is about to prove it. Now, Horowitz turned in his report into potential FISA abuses to Attorney General William Barr almost 4 weeks ago. Interestingly enough, nothing has been leaked. And that in and of itself should be sending a message. And if there was anything that could be leaked from the report that would mitigate the coming fallout, we would have seen it by now. So this suggests that the report is incredibly damaging to the Obama administration. Boy, I sure hope so. Pat Buchanan wrote an article, "Is Trump facing a 1960s style revolt?" And they're talking about how Trump went to the World Series game the afternoon that Baghdadi was killed, and the people in the stands booed him. Well, I mean, Washington, D.C., only 4% of them voted for Trump in 2016. So he had to know it was going to be a hostile crowd going on in there. But again, and also, if you look at how much those tickets cost, you're not going to get your middle-class working Trump supporter in those bleachers. They're at home watching on TV, having a beer. So Nancy Pelosi has called for an impeachment vote on Thursday, except it's not really an impeachment vote. It's a vote on a bill to define the correct procedures to move forward with the impeachment, which are already defined in the Constitution, I should point out. And so, you know, she kept insisting, I don't need a vote, I don't need a vote. Now she's trying to legitimize herself with a vote. And it's reached a point where Representatives Mark Meadows and Kevin McCarthy just called her out on it, saying this is all a sham. It's just political theater. So Pelosi has since said it's not a formal impeachment inquiry resolution. It just sets some new rules, and this is not technically a House resolution. So basically, she's backtracking, which I read as an admission that the whole process has been botched right from the very, very start. Now, Representative Jim Jordan is saying if the vote goes ahead, it won't change anything. Absolutely will not change anything. President Trump has gone after Democrats on this impeachment thing, and he says Adam Schiff is a criminal. Okay, well, slap on the handcuffs here. William Barr says that the U.S. attorney investigating the Trump-Russia probe origins is making great progress. And he's defending John Durham as having a great reputation for nonpartisanship in an interview on Fox News, which doesn't mean he can't be threatened or bought or blackmailed. But I am getting really tired of all this teasing that's going on in corporate media. We're almost there. We're going to investigate. There's going to be an inquiry. We're going to go after all these people that you Americans know did all these horrible things. Now, there is a story that's out there. This came from 12160.info that James Comey has turned. It is now agreeing to cooperate with investigators. I think this is like the second one. And now we're going to see a lot of them trying to make deals. It's like birds on a wire. So this came originally from Agenda 21 Radio. Former FBI Director Comey has turned against those involved in the attempt to remove President Trump from office. So we'll see what happens there. Now, another development in the Michael Flynn case. Apparently, Judge Emmett Sullivan had a comprehensive briefing by attorney Sidney Powell, who represents General Flynn. And after that briefing, the judge canceled the Flynn hearing set for next week. Now, we know Powell is saying, we got the FBI fabricating evidence to frame this guy. It's time to dismiss all the charges and just let him go. Flynn's still going to have all those legal bills to deal with. But, you know, he's got one heck of a lawsuit against the people who perpetrated this fraud. He could sue the FBI for defamation on the basis of their altering his FD 302. And again, in this age of digital recording equipment, why are they still using FD 302 forms? Which, as this case proves, can be altered, can be forged. So when you take a document and you're copying from one to the other and paraphrasing as you go, you open up at the very least the possibility of mistakes, at the very worst, cover-up. And we saw that in the Vince Foster case back in 1994. Now, the courts have ordered the Department of Justice to turn over the secret grand jury materials from the Mueller investigation, and the Department of Justice is pushing back, saying it'll be irreparably harmed if Congress gets that information. So they've got something to hide. Wouldn't it just be wonderful if it all fell apart at the same time? March into Washington, D.C., we go along on tar and feathers, and we reset the government back to what it was when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was first signed. Everything up to and including that 13th Amendment. Now I want to add a 14th Amendment in there. No more private central banking. because that's what has brought the entire globe to the edge of collapse. Over in North Carolina, a panel of state judges are blocking the state's GOP-friendly congressional map from being used in 2020, saying it's very obviously been gerrymandered, for political gain. This is a win for Eric Holder's initiative. We're getting word now that Joe Biden is going to step down from the presidential race because he's simply not getting the donors. Remember, I think it was last week, we were talking about how Biden had gone out there with the high ground saying, I'm not going to take money from the super PACs. And then late last week, he said, yeah, I need the money from the super PACs. And apparently the super PACs have kind of ignored him. So we're hearing he's going to drop out. That puts Elizabeth Warren in position number 1. President Pocahontas. Boy, just imagine how that's going to look. All right, back to the phones here. Tom in Florida. Aloha. Well, actually, no, Tom. No, go ahead, Tom. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day, Michael. Yeah, your last few callers are really good. Speaking about that, Omar, I believe now she has a white boyfriend. Have you seen pictures of her boyfriend?
Not really, but then I'm not following the celebrity news these days.
Well, they had that on One American News where her boyfriend, and she married her brother. I don't know if you know that. She was married to her brother.
And that involved immigration fraud.
That is correct. And as far as AOC goes, I heard something about, she's Puerto Rican, as you well know. And there's something about her in her family's tree about something. I can't remember exactly what it was, so I better not say, but I heard it's kind of leftist to the left. I mean, how she was raised and stuff. So kind of weird. I can't remember. I saw an article about that. I can't remember. I think it was in the scandal sheets. But anyway, yeah, Michael. I heard Dustin earlier. Dustin, he said he ain't going to ever vote. So he's not going to vote again. New Jersey, you got a senator needs to go. His name is Robert Mendez. That jerk. You should get rid of that jerk off. So you should vote him out. You should try to vote some of those liberal, licky, kissy, touchy-feely Democrats you got in the great state of New Jersey. It's a shame that state is the highest tax state in the country, and people are fleeing left and right out of there. It's just it's amazing how they're leaving there, going to the Carolinas and stuff, and they're south. It's unbelievable. And if Dustin wants that cold weather, stay right there in Jersey and have a good time. But Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, Michael. Another thing is, Trump gave a speech in Chicago. I was listening to it today about what's the crime rate in Chicago. He was in the city of Chicago, talked about the mayor the police chief didn't show up. The mayor is a leftist, lesbian communist, Bolshevik. I mean, that was one time one of probably the greatest cities in the world, Chicago. Now it's what's that, Michael?
I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Oh, I heard a noise. Anyway, Chicago's gone to pot. Let's put it that way. And we keep having, they're talking on One American News right now, Michael. I want you to talk about this. They're talking about in the Obama administration had all these illegals coming in here, and they were supposed to be taking their DNA. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, the DNA testing was supposedly to guarantee that children who were being brought in were really the offspring of the adults they were in the company of.
Yeah, well, the Mexican government's taking the DNA of the Guatemalans and Ecuadorians that are coming into Mexico trying to get citizenship there. The illegals that are pouring into Mexico, the Mexican government's taking their DNA. But the United States is not.
I understand the program basically just ran out of steam or ran out of money or was, politically incorrect. How dare you even think that these people trying to sneak into our country without being citizens would lie about something that important?
Well, exactly. Michael, let's get back to Donald Trump. Yeah, he's not the greatest president. Like I've told you in the past, he ain't no Teddy Roosevelt. Or, forget that. But at least
he's not even Millard Fillmore.
At least you got a guy with Trump that brought out the immigration. You would never hear this out of a Democrat, Hillary or Warren or Biden. They would all shut their mouth and let them keep pouring in by the millions. So let's put it this way: you never even heard of the deep state, the swamp, and all that. So and people are just packing Trump left and right at baseball games. Like you said, Washington, D.C. is 1% Republican, the rest 96% Democrat. You know what? Screw the base. That's another thing. I think all these sports now are rigged. You ever remember you remember that show that used to come on with was it the scientific show? Oh gosh, can't think of it right now. Oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the show. Anyway, they had an episode with the girl, the redheaded girl with Mueller, Mueller, and I can't remember the show right now. I went blank on the show. I was just thinking about it. Yeah. But anyway, in one of the episodes, they have the Smoking Man. You remember the Smoking Man? Yeah.
Oh, you're thinking X-Files.
Yeah, X-Files. That's it. And the X-Files. You remember what the Smoking Man said in that show, Michael? The one episode.
Well, I'm a big X-Files fan, but I don't remember. Without more information, I can't figure out what episode you're talking about.
The one episode he's talking about the betting of the sports, and all the sports are fixed, and he's talking about the Super Bowl. And the Smoky Man said the Buffalo Bills will never win the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember that episode.
Yeah.
I thought that was intriguing that in that X-Files one episode, the Smoking Man was talking about how sports is like basically fixed, and they already know what the results are before the results come out. I thought that was really intriguing seeing that one episode. I'll never forget that episode. When they called.
Do you remember the Chicago Black Sox?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what. That was a big scandal with Shoeless Joe Jackson, I think it was.
Yeah, and all the horse race fixing going on. I mean, anything that involves gambling, whether on or off the track, organized crime is involved in it, and they're going to shift the game to whatever's going to make them the most money. Anyway, Tom, we're going to let you go. All right, I'm going to hold you on. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Tom in Florida. And Tom, you said you had one more thing you wanted to talk about.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Michael, did you have a chance to see the news on Newsmax, the thing about the Kennedy assassination? With Bob Barr? Robert Barr? Robert Baer. I think it's Robert Baer's name. Robert Baer, that's his name. Robert.
I think I did catch that.
That was very, very interesting, and I want to ask your opinion on this, Michael, because what he showed in that 2-hour documentary is totally amazing to me.
Yes.
The month before Kennedy got assassinated, Lee Harvey Oswald went to the swamp outside of Newark, I guess off the Mississippi River. Did you see that documentary?
I may not have seen that part of it. I mean, 2 hours is a lot of time to me. Are you talking about the time when supposedly he met Clay Shaw along the banks of the river?
No.
Okay.
No. He was training with the Cubans. They had Cubans
yes, of course. Operation Mongoose.
Yeah, but what was really interesting to me on that was when, and this is all documented, you can bring it up on your computer, was really interesting what Mr. Baer was talking about was that J. Edgar Hoover had a memo that Lee Harvey Oswald was telling Fidel Castro, wherever I guess it was in Havana or whatever, and he's telling Castro, I'm going to take care of Kennedy. Basically, he's going to, what he was going to do this to Kennedy. And Castro, being, of course, he was a communist leader of Cuba, he kept it quiet. He didn't let anybody know about it. But J. Edgar Hoover basically had a letter saying he heard that. I don't know if they had a tape on it or what. But how is that possible that J. Edgar Hoover had a letter and Oswald's talking to Castro about what he's going to do to Kennedy?
Well, I got to be very honest. First of all, J. Edgar Hoover, was no more honest than any other FBI agent, as we just found out through Lisa Page here. Second of all, the Oswald who went to Cuba was not the Lee Harvey Oswald. That was actually illustrated by photographs that were shown in Oliver Stone's movie JFK. So they just sent somebody down through Mexico over to Cuba saying, hi, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm going to kill the president. But you need to understand the original plotters of the assassination, they didn't want a Lee Harvey Oswald at all. They wanted a link directly to Cuba to anger the American people into supporting a second invasion following the collapse of the Bay of Pigs.
Exactly. And you're absolutely correct, Michael. But listen, Lee Harvey Oswald is on tape. It's all it's archived. It's everything. Forget the Zapruder tape. Lee Harvey's on the video saying, I didn't shoot. I didn't kill anybody. And that, yes. And they did that. They did the lie detector test on him, on his voice imaging, I guess they call it. And he passed the test. So when Harvey Oswald, 24 hours before Jack Rubenstein shot him, and I guess I was in the jailhouse in Dallas.
Yes.
Oswald,
basement of the police.
Being interrogated by the sheriffs, and he's telling them, hey, I didn't shoot nobody. That's even on film.
Yeah.
So my point is, they know for the month before Oswald went to Dallas, that was a missing 30 days. And this guy on the Newsmax documentary, he actually found out where Oswald was. He actually pinpointed where Oswald was working in the garage and where he went to go train in the swamp off the river, the Mississippi, and then how it was tied in because, like you had mentioned, the Cubans felt betrayed that Kennedy backed out of the Bay of Pigs with the air support.
So did the CIA.
And, yes, but the guy, this guy who brought this Newsmax documentary, Robert Baer, this guy was unbelievable what he brought out. He was thorough, and I mean, tell you, this guy's an ex-CIA agent, so it was really intriguing to see that program and to see how it all really went down. And Oswald, before he gets killed, 24 hours before Rubenstein shot him, Jack Ruby, Rubenstein, his name was not Ruby. He's another player. I don't want to get into that. You'll figure that one out. But yes, Oswald's basically saying, I didn't shoot nobody. So, I mean, this is unbelievable what's going on with this documentary here.
Yeah.
It's explosive. It really is. And then, look, I don't know what to say, Michael, but like what's going on in the Middle East, all those countries in the Middle East now want atomic bombs. Figure it out. Look at Pakistan and India. They're ready to go at it. They both are nuclear powers. So
yes,
if that ever goes down, that will be the ignition of the thing, the end of the world right there. If those two actually ever go at it.
Remember Tom Lehrer wrote funny songs?
Yes.
He had the proliferation song.
Yes. Remember that? Yep. Yes.
Okay, well, we got to take another break. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, speaking of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is now out there claiming that predominantly white companies are helping hurricanes kill off predominantly black and brown lives. Now, I don't know how she got to that, but obviously playing the race card here. And just in time for the holiday shopping season, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has put out her very own 2020 wall calendar. And apparently the comment there is not all sheroes wear capes. Just in time for the holidays, the perfect gift for all your friends who are too dumb to use a smartphone calendar or too dumb to realize what a phony AOC actually is. All right, let's get back to Katie Hill, who rose to political victory during the 2018 midterms and has now fallen from grace following revelations of her being a wild child. And I want to be a little clear here. I don't have a problem with her being a wild child. We were all young once. We all probably have done things we wish we hadn't. We're glad we survived. Let's be a little bit honest here. But yesterday, she announced her resignation from the House of Representatives over the scandal. And today she's come on back. She's issued a video saying that all of this was the fault of her abusive husband, the right-wing media, and GOP. that somehow they're responsible for the Thrupal relationship and the Naked Bong Party scandal. Now, the media is already out there. The corporate media is out there trying to suggest that she really did nothing wrong, even though Congress passed a bill last year banning what she did, which was the relationship with her staffers. So, you know, under the Me Too rules, hashtag Me Too, no person in a position of power can truly receive consent from a subordinate for a relationship. And it looks like the Democrats did not learn from the Al Franken episode. And Katie Hill is out there saying that this is just revenge porn, and she and her ex are going through a very nasty divorce. So, members of Flags Across the South are out there saying that the political divisions that we're seeing in this country are fueling rising concern over a new civil war. And I'm hearing more and more people talk about this. And, you know, it wouldn't be, you know, line ahead against each other as it was in the first Civil War. It'd be more of a guerrilla battle. They're out there openly saying, yeah, it looks like one is going to come. And I hope he's wrong. That's all I can say. I hope he's wrong. All righty. Interesting little article. This was written by Alice Bird. And she starts out by saying, by quoting Thomas Jefferson, writing to Stephen William Smith from Paris in November of 1787, saying, "The people cannot be all and always well informed. Part which is wrong will be discontented in proportion to the importance of the facts they misconceive. If they remain quiet under such misconceptions, it is a lethargy, a forerunner of death to the public liberty. What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance?" Now, what this article is saying is that basically it's time to start letting the government know we have reached our limit. She goes on to quote, of course, from the Declaration of Independence. "Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they're accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce some under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security." And the point that she is trying to make, at what point do the American people say, we have suffered enough? We have reached the breaking point. We will endure no more. I'm mad as heck, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Now, we have been very critical of the corporate media on this show for being such industrious and liars. But the fact is, it has been going on for a very, very long time. It's just that we, the American people, didn't see it. Now, Herbert Hoover built the Federal Broadcasting Shield in 1927. That was when radio broadcasting was really starting to make its way into the mass public, and they wanted to get a handle on it, just like they're trying to get a handle on the internet today. Now, Franklin Roosevelt fashioned it into a weapon in 1934, and the Democrats have never put it down since then. So the relationship between the corporate media lying to the public and the Democratic Party goes back pretty much all the way to World War II. And the press got politicized. Yet in school, your children are being taught, we have a free, unrestrained press. No, we don't. been gone a long time. Okay, let's talk about the economic news here a little bit. Apparently, there's a phenomenon that has started to worry or excite investors. Companies that are missing their earnings per share forecasts are surging. And what's going on here is markets have learned economic data is irrelevant as long as you have a central bank that can create and inject trillions in liquidities just out of thin air. Corporations are issuing trillions in debt to repurchase trillions in stocks, which pushes the S&P to an all-time high. They're gaming the system to keep it going. Ordinary investors are out. I saw an article the other day. You've probably seen all these commercials on TV for, doing online trades from home. And there was a study done that showed something like 98% of the people who engage in online trading are going to lose money. For one thing, they don't have access to the insider information. For another, they can't possibly compete with the high-speed computerized trading that goes on between the big brokerages. But according to this report from Deutsche Bank, we've reached a point, not only are earnings misses by European companies not punished, they're being rewarded by the most on record. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, thank you for taking my call. I would like to start off with Katie Hill. Now, okay. I have no argument. I have no argument with what you're saying. What anybody does with their sex life, that's their business. But I would like to talk about the obvious omission of the media, and that's that so-called Nazi cross near her pelvic region. Now, yes. If there had been a picture of Trump, the media would have tortured. I mean, let's just go ahead. I'll use the word. They would have lynched him by now because of it. Okay, and that's the hypocritical aspect I have with the so-called liberal media. Okay, they can be conservative with information when they want to be, when it's to their convenience. Okay, but that's what they're being really quiet about. But I want to move on to, I think it was Frank from North Carolina. I think the gentleman was from North Carolina. I'm not sure, but when he brought up, when you guys were talking about Snowden. Yes. And I remember that interview with Wester Tarpley way back then, and Tarpley said that the only reason that he was allowed to escape to Russia is that the U.S. was hoping to use him as a double agent against Russia. Okay, they let him escape to Russia, hoping Russia would snatch him up, thinking that he had information. But Putin had since come out and said he's not even interested in what anything Snowden has to say. He can stay there if he like. If he wants to seek asylum and stay there, that's fine. But the Russians say they don't need anything from him. So I do agree with that. With that's how that was played. But the Russians just didn't bite. Now I want to move on to something that Tom said earlier, and I'm like you. I am too a big fan of the X-Files. All the intricacies of it, and even down to the name. What was Mulder, and what was the other guy? What was the guy's name?
Mulder was the guy. Dana Scully was the girl, and Fox Mulder was the guy here. Exactly. And I want to clarify my thing. When X-Files first started out, and they were doing basically, the legends we all grew up with, like Mothman and so forth, it was a fun show. Then they got locked into that plot and conspiracy with the aliens, and at that point I kind of lost interest in the program.
Yeah, I remember when it went down that road, but I liked even the setup, the basic setup of it was, Fox Mulder was supposed to, because if you notice, Scully was always, Mulder had to bring her into his way of thinking. So even with the name, they set it up to the point that he had to mold her, Scully, who had an empty brain, in a sense, into his way of thinking. I love how the show went on that level. Now, I want to, and the reason I'm saying that is to say this, is that I agree with Tom in what he's saying about the whole thing. This whole world is set up. And if you're not careful, you could fall right into it. When one of the characters said the Buffalo Bills will never win the Super Bowl, there's a lot of truth to that. Now, I'm gonna tell you about a conversation I had with an NBA ref. We met on vacation. We remained friends after that. I'll give enough so people can figure this out for themselves, but I will not give his name. But if people just do a little research, they can figure it out. But I remember when Shaq and the Orlando Magic made it to the NBA Finals for the first time and played against Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets. And I'm having a conversation with this ref, and I'm like, you guys you should have fouled Shaq out in all 4 of those games. I mean, the guy, obviously, he's a hack. He can't play. He's a brute on the court. And he said, we had our orders. This is coming from an NBA ref. He said, we had our orders. So what does that tell you? If the sports game is not rigged. But last but not least, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's been traced back to a financial organization belonging to Jeffrey Epstein that happened to win the Oklahoma lottery not once, but twice.
Yes.
So if you don't think the whole game is rigged, people, think again and start thinking for yourselves for a change. That's about it, Mike. Thank you for taking my call.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Debbie in Ohio. Aloha, Debbie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just got new dentist, so I sound bad. But
don't worry about it.
Something really important to say.
Okay.
The Federal Reserve is now giving the banks $100 billion a day. That's all money that they're giving them. And this is going to go on until we're ruined. QE did not stop. It continued. Tomorrow, Jerome Powell will decide for us. We're going to have negative interest rates. But it's good to the bank because we paid for the money to get. It's they're trying to eliminate the middle class, and they're doing a real good job. And $100 billion, and it's going to go up. In fact, Trump said he wants things to be easier for the banks. How easy can it be? Peter, Justin, Tom, you all have to hear this. It's $100 billion. We will never see this, and they're giving the banks this money for free. That's all I have to say. I don't sound really bad. If dentist says it gets much better. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call, and I know it's rough. Well, I personally don't know it, but I've seen it with my family and my parents and relatives. Getting new dentures, it's rough the first few days because your tongue doesn't know where things are anymore. But it will get a lot better. So just take it easy on yourself. All right. All right, so we're going to let you go here. The phone lines are now open, 800-313-9443. We're talking about the economic news. And Bob Schiller is out there saying, I see bubbles everywhere, and there is no place to hide. So we're getting all these warnings that the economy is about ready to come apart. And nobody seems able or willing to do anything about it other than just create more money out of thin air and try and inflate all the debt away, which of course is going to bring the dollar crashing down. And right now, our economy is dependent on other nations using our dollars, commerce, for which they pay interest. They all quit, and it looks like that's underway. Dollar is finished. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking about the economic news here. And over at WeWork, they need a name change. We don't work. And soon it'll be we failed. Thousands of employees get the axe. Apparently, the founder of WeWork is walking away with a golden parachute worth roughly $1 billion. And that's a big reason why our economy isn't working anymore, is because of the inequality. And it may well be that all of the bankers and CEOs and politicians know this country's headed for collapse, knows they can't stop it, so they're just going to loot the silver drawer and head for the border. So manager and financial expert Michael Pinto of Pinto Portfolio Strategies is predicting a brutal market meltdown in the coming year. Saying the real inflation is already closer to 8% a year thanks to the government and its phony CPI. So it's going to happen, and you need to be prepared for it. You really do. Okay. And let's talk about PG&E. Their stock hit a new low today. It's down over 28% today alone, and that's because all the investors know PG&E, they're going to get nailed for this, one way or the other. They had another tower, sparked another fire. The rolling blackouts, 1.8 million without power is the last number that I heard. And they can't do anything about it. They don't have the resources. So there's poor people in California. Now, James LeBron rather, yes, he's very rich. He just bought a $23 million California home. And now because of the fires, he's homeless. I'm sure somebody will gladly take him in here. But at this point, fires and power cuts are turning the Golden State into a dystopia. And I saw a report just before we went to air here that the insurers are telling the people of California, go stuff it. We're not covering this. Over in China, we've been talking about this swine fever that is just devastating the pig farms. And it's gotten so bad that China is now reverting to using dog as a meat source. And we're looking at this massive global pork shortage, which makes me question that story we had last week about this supposed warehouse surplus of bacon. We're going to take a break now for station identification. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and taking a leap across the pond to jolly old England. It seems that the EU has graciously extended the deadline for a Brexit deal to January 31st of next year. It's trying to drag it out, find some way for this to work. Now, Boris Johnson says that he will abandon his attempt to hold a general election if the amendments are passed allowing 16-year-olds and EU citizens to vote. This is going to get very, very contentious. They were originally planning for a 12th of December general election. Parliament is talking about these amendments to allow EU citizens and the very young to vote. And that, of course, is going to bias the results here because, you know, the very young, they've grown up with the EU. It's all they know. They don't know what life was like in Great Britain before the European Union. The older people do. So we got to shut them down. We got to get the young people in there. Meanwhile, we're seeing this pushback against liberalism and globalism. There have been major conservative victories in Italy and Germany. In Thuringia, Germany, the AfD exceeded expectations, came in second, getting more of the young voters than any other group. Donald Trump is going to challenge California's sanctuary law in the Supreme Court. And he's asking the Supreme Court to toss California law barring state authorities from cooperating with federal immigration officials. So the California Values Act, or Senate Bill 54, bans law enforcement from transferring criminal aliens to immigration authorities or sharing personal information about migrants. So we had a caller talking about Julian Assange. Paul Craig Roberts has an article out saying we must act now to save Julian Assange and the rule of law. And basically, it's a pitch to sign a petition over at paulcraigroberts.org to say, you know, Julian Assange must be taken care of. But at this point, the die is cast. The judge in the court in Britain has made it very obvious. It's a foregone conclusion. Assange is going to be sent back to the United States of America, and he's going to be dealt with very harshly because he told the truth. Like a modern-day Socrates. Socrates was a Greek. Socrates told the truth. The Greeks killed Socrates. Okay, down in Florida, this totally tolerant liberal has been arrested for assaulting a 67-year-old man who dared to wear his MAGA hat in public. Now, the guy who was assaulted, the guy wearing the MAGA hat, was 67 years old. He's my age. And he was assaulted by Matthias Ajpal, who was 43 years old. And basically, you know, struck the 67-year-old man, Robert Youngblood. Now, Youngblood told an Indian River County Sheriff's Office deputy he was sitting at the bar of the Hurricane Grill on 943rd, 15th Place with two friends when Archibald walked over and said, "You should go back to Russia, you blanking communists." Archibald then slapped the brim of Youngblood's hat before leaning over a gate and spitting on him. And apparently he was heard to say he didn't care if he had to go to jail for it. Well, you got your wish, you're on your way. Down in Florida, the police have been caught creating illegal lists for tracking gun owners. Now, according to Florida state law, statute 790.335, no state governmental agency or local government special district or other political subdivision or official agent or employee of such state or other government entity in any of the person, public or private, shall knowingly and willfully keep or cause to be kept any list, record, or registry of privately owned firearms or the owners of those firearms. Government agencies found in violation of the law are committing a felony, and the cops in Florida were caught doing just that. This is coming out of ammoland.com, which alleges that police in Florida are using information to compile these unlawful lists of gun owners in the state, a direct violation of Florida law. Now, despite getting caught red-handed, the Charlotte County State's Attorney's Office determined that the Charlotte County Sheriff's Department did not violate any laws in compiling their police. They're above the law. Now, comedian Dave Chappelle just received the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor at the Kennedy Center. Good, he deserved it. He praised free speech and said, it's okay for comedians to be racist. It's just a point of view. Then he went on to say that that Second Amendment exists in case the government tries to take the First Amendment away from us, which is exactly what's happening right now. So, Dave, I hope you got your Kevlar undies on. What can I tell you? It has been 80 days since Jeffrey Epstein supposedly killed himself by hanging on his knees. That's the official story. In 80 days, nothing's happened. What's happened about that at all? Okay, pardon me. And a reply here. All right, so this inmate who was tied to the U.S. trial of the brother of the president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, he was apparently ambushed in prison, shot in the head multiple times before being hacked with a machete to send a message someplace. And it's another reminder about just how many governments around the world the politicians are tied in with the drug traffickers. War on drugs is a war on the competition's drugs, not our drugs. That's why CIA could get cocaine up from Central and South America during that whole Iran-Contra thing. That's why they're able to get all this opium back from Afghanistan without being disturbed. It's only the little players trying to cut in on our action. That's who the war on drugs is on. Okay, Boeing Chief Executive Dennis Muilenburg is testifying before Congress on the 737 MAX and is acknowledging that, yeah, we kind of made some mistakes on the plane here, and we meant well. And he said, we know we made some mistakes. We got some things wrong. Now, according to this article, investigations have faulted the company's design of an automated feature that malfunctioned before the crashes, driving the noses of the two planes down until they crashed. There's more to it than that. There were those new engines that were put on the standard 737 frame that had to be moved forward to clear the wings, changed the aerodynamics completely. Alrighty, NASA is creating nuclear rockets to help put humans on Mars. And I'm glad that NASA's back in the space business, because they weren't really very effective as Al Gore's cheering section. Now, this is an article, I mentioned it briefly above here, that Google search is getting worse and worse. The information is throttled, get a lot of ads. I was doing some searches. I should have just gone with DuckDuckGo, but force of habit, I brought Google up and I did some search. Got a ton of ads, a lot of them not even related to the search terms. And it's becoming very slow. It's time for some new players, I think, out there in search engine land. Understand that search engines are for searching, not controlling what everybody sees, hears, or reads. That's probably one of the reasons why Google is slowing down, is the load from all of these new algorithms and filters they've put in there at the request of somebody, more than likely the Democrats. Well, a little bit of good news here. There was the so-called anti-meme law, which would have required copyright alternative in small claims enforcement. And it passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives. The Senate has blocked it. Now, the idea was that if somebody saw a meme at your website that used copyrighted material, they could sue you. They could make a claim. And critics are saying it's going to stifle creativity. It's going to stifle discussion. I'm sure you all remember back in 2016 how I used memes to make my comments about Hillary Clinton here. But critics are saying this law could easily be abused for censorship and by copyright trolls who could potentially bankrupt internet users for nothing more than sharing a meme. It's also unconstitutional because the Seventh Amendment guarantees a trial by jury for civil disputes over $20. They can't just come on in there and say, we caught you painting new quotations on a picture of Hillary Clinton, and you got to give us all your money. Getting into the world of computers here, Greg Crow Hartman, who's the stable Linux kernel maintainer, basically gave a keynote speech at the Open Source Summit in Europe. And he paraphrased Winston Churchill, "I have nothing to offer but blood, sweat, and tears for dealing with Intel CPU security problem." And Chinese developers were saying this is very sad talk. And the issue has to do with a feature that Intel put on their chips called speculative execution that tries to guess what the next action for the CPU will be and sort of set things up ahead of time. Now, this is a little different than caching. This is sort of the computer CPU equivalent of a crystal ball. But it exposes data. And when it breaks down the barriers between virtual machines and cloud computing environments, it's a security nightmare. But it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon. Linux wants to sell fast CPUs, and the security is somebody else's department. You know, there's this kind of competition going on between software and hardware developers. Software developers are relying on the hardware developers to just make faster machines so they can be sloppy in how they write the code. And the hardware developers want the software developers to write code that's easy and cheap to run. It's this lack of cooperation and coordination that's really messed things up. I remember years ago, my wife bought me a copy of the Microsoft FX Flight Simulator. And when I opened the box, there was this little printed notice right on top saying, you will probably see that this software runs very, very slowly, but we wrote it for the next generation of computers we just know you're going to be buying in another year or two, so have patience. Basically what it means is Microsoft couldn't get the software to work. And this is their way of bailing out of it and still going to market with it here. Over at Mozilla, they've released Firefox version 70, and apparently they've already hit a snag where Firefox 70 will not properly load the websites and page elements. Promise a fix in a future release, but they came out with a workaround. And that is to go to About Config and look for a preference called the DOM Storage Next Gen preference. And if you set that to false, things will work. Well, the next update. This one is probably going to keep a lot of people awake at night. Apparently, it was learned just back in 2014. The U.S. military has been using 8-inch floppy disks in an antiquated 1970s computer to receive the nuclear launch orders from the president. Now, you've got to be my age to remember what 8-inch floppy disks were like. Probably a lot of you have seen the 3.5, and if you're a little bit older, the 5 3/4. These 8-inch disks were big, to hold a lot. And apparently the U.S. Strategic Command has finally announced it's replacing the drives with a highly secure, solid-state digital storage solution. But I think that sort of illustrates that the government will spend huge amounts of money on these weapon systems and then just neglect them, not update them. Now, speaking of updates, we're seeing this all over the place, so apparently Apple is really concerned about this. If you are the owner of an older iPhone or iPad, you must update their software by midnight on Saturday or risk your devices going offline. And apparently it's an issue with GPS from which the Apple software derives a time signal. And if you cannot get a good time signal, things won't work. Apparently this is a problem with GPS that's actually been around for a while. That occurs once every 19 years. And it happened, I guess, back in April, which is not 19 years, causing some devices to lose track of time. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, apparently there's been a big earthquake down in Mindanao, 6.6, 2 killed, work and classes are suspended. So Mother Earth is not happy these days, which if you look at how we're behaving, certainly makes a lot of sense. Okay, now getting on back over to this, and all right. Okay, apparently White House has gone on the verbal attack against the impeachment resolution, saying it's an illegitimate sham, which it is. There's no due process for Donald Trump. And the Democrats have now introduced the bill, and it omits details about what rights Donald Trump has when the hearings go public. So it's basically, it's a blind side is what it is here. Over in Lebanon, Prime Minister Hariri has submitted his resignation in response to the ongoing anti-government protests. Apparently it's getting really, really ugly over there. And he submitted his resignation and said, I have reached an end today. I will head to the Baabda Palace to submit the government's resignation to President Michael Aoun, and called for the protection of Lebanon, so forth and so on. I mentioned this already, but I'm going to mention it again. The million-plus Californians affected by power outages and wildfire evacuations can rest easy knowing that their governor has just formed a new working group to focus on getting messaging to de-energization areas. That's the new polite term for it. We're blacked out here. No, you're de-energized here. And apparently, it's a real problem. People aren't used to seeing California look like this. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. So Sid Blumenthal, who was this loyal Hillary operative, is out there suddenly making threats of litigation. He's going to sue somebody for something. And Senator Grassley, meanwhile, is seeking the identity of all of Hillary's staffers. So it looks like something big may be brewing. But of course, you know, that deep state, they've got a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of money, and they're going to basically do everything they can to keep their rear ends out of the Gray Bar Hotel. And I'm expecting we're going to start seeing some wet work, just like what we did with that witness connected to the trial of the president of Honduras' brother, like we saw with Seth Rich. So the war of words over in Pakistan and India, it's heating up. And it does look at this point like open conflict is going to be unavoidable. And Pakistan's Minister for Kashmir issues a stark warning to all friends of its enemies: side with India and face our missiles. That's tough talk. And remember, both India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. They got the big ones that go boom here. Alrighty. Apparently back over in Britain, an update on Brexit. the members of parliament are clashing over this idea of a snap election after Brexit gets delayed again. I imagine they're probably just as fed up with all of this nonsense and as the British people are. Oh, this is wonderful. Apparently, the U.S. Navy's inventory tracking has reached a new level when they uncovered $126 million worth of aircraft parts stored in an unknown warehouse. These were components for the P-8 Poseidon, the P-3 Orion, and the F-14 Tomcat. And they're saying not only did we not know that the parts existed, we didn't even know the warehouse existed. But, you know, it's only money. It's not even our money. Just huge, huge, huge. All right, the NCAA has decided they're going to allow college athletes to get paid endorsements, profit off their name, image, and likeness. It's sort of like a pre-going pro strategy. A lot of people are going to say it's, you know, it's too much commercialization of what is supposed to be an educational system. Apparently, PG&E is eyeing a third major wind event and a blackout. And apparently, all 6 of the U.S. Navy's aircraft carriers assigned to the East Coast are in port for the same time for repairs. So the Navy is pulling itself increasingly thin in an effort to accommodate the Pentagon's program for great power competition with Russia and China. As of the time this article was published, not one of the U.S. Navy's carriers on the Atlantic coast is ready for deployment. All 6 are tied up in Norfolk, Virginia, and several of these huge 100,000-ton warships returned to Norfolk for a series of overhauls. Others have encountered unexpected problems. And we're not ready. We're not ready to go to war against Russia and China. It's a mistake. Because the instant our war planners realize we're losing a conventional war, they'll resort to the nukes. It's going to be a bad day for anybody not wearing 2 million sunblock. Alrighty, we mentioned this before, going to mention it again. Insurers in California have yanked the fire coverage from 350,000 residents in response to the PG&E power blackouts and fire risk. Now, I don't know exactly what law here is. I imagine somewhere in that insurance contract that we all sign, it says, at our discretion, we can reevaluate the risk. Oh, got to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're finishing up about this story where out in California, insurers have yanked the fire coverage from 350,000 policyholders. And I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit filed over that one. So these people, they're SOL. They've lost their homes. They've lost everything to these PG&E fires. And I'm sure that PG&E will probably declare bankruptcy to shield itself from the lawsuits. Everybody's going to be scrambling to protect the money. I think the state of California should take over PG&E and turn it back into a public utility rather than a privately run corporation. Every time something essential to life in this country is privatized and sold into the hands of a corporation, the costs go up, the quality goes down, safety considerations literally get tossed in the shredder. And that's what happened here. I don't think PG&E as a business entity is going to be around much longer. Okay, getting on over into the world of political correctness. You're going to love this one. Apparently, in a new live-action film of Cinderella, one of the fairy godmothers is going to be this gay black man. Being inclusive. We're being inclusive. And you would think that by now, Hollywood executives would have realized that when you take somebody's cherished, if you will, characters, storyline, and you start mucking them up, people are not going to respond very well. They don't want to be indoctrinated. It's like I mentioned with the feminized Ghostbusters, that didn't do very well at the box office. I remember when they did the remake of Day the Earth Stood Still. And the Keanu Reeves character basically said, no, I'm here to basically, cleanse the earth of humans because, of global warming and all the rest of that. And it was a decent movie. It didn't do well. These things don't do well. People want to see movies that make them comfortable. Okay, we've got a caller on the line, Todd in Long Beach. Aloha, welcome to this show. What's on your mind?
Oh, California. Thank you for taking my call, Mike. I want to talk about California. Two things. One, it's a known fact that the citizens of the state of California, the Republic of California, mind you, are paying taxes for air tankers that are supposed to fight fires that do not fly or do not exist. That's a fact. You can do what they call a CAFR, C-A-F-I-R, on almost anything here in California. You just got to know how to ask for it and what it is. It's the California Accounting Financial something instrument, something registry, where all the finances for each county breaks it down to each and every, down to even how much people are paid, and that's where you find all your fine hidden gold on where the money is. Okay, yeah. I don't buy it that California is broke. It may be broke in the fact that the money has been reversed into some people's hip bank national pockets, but it's certainly not broke because it went elsewhere. So one of my thoughts is about California and the thing with what Trump did with which is involved 3 people from California when he did the thing from yesterday to take out al-Baghdadi. Well, think about it. There are 3 major players on the Intel board that are senators from the state of California. Was this a play to say it was al-Baghdadi? Because, listen, we've heard in the past that al-Baghdadi was killed and he resurfaced. I can show you the reverse articles on those, okay? So who knows if he was dead or not? People can say that all they want, but they don't have the facts. We weren't there. We don't see the dead body. We don't have dental forensics. So there you go. We're going to have to take the president's word that they got him this time, okay? That's how I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to run with it. My thing is, though, is that there's a big article that came out about how Pelosi, Schiff, and one other person here in California were doing business in Syria, drug business. Okay, so was this to take out financial instruments that were related to the California 3? It should be California 10, because Waters is involved with that, and as well as Fan and 6 more. Okay, so was this Trump's little trump card playing a joker, seeing who's got what, and let's see where the cards fall and do the raid anyways, because we really don't know what the target was. They did carry out the raid. Okay, that's a fact. It's been done. Okay, but what and who and how and when, I'm still like even as I'm formally trained in this kind of stuff, and I'm still reeling, okay, who did what? Where? You got a dog doing what? It died, okay. You know, did it sniff out Baghdadi's pootie hole and died of his nastiness? Or, you know, it's just interesting that I see a lot of things that are add up and yet don't add up, and some the don't add up make me ponder this military operation. And are they going to be silenced like the Golden Six coming out of Pakistan that did supposedly, quote unquote, Obama,
Osama,
the guy there.
Yeah,
Osama. Sorry, I was tongue-tied for a second. Thank you, Mike. But the point is that I've known and heard from some of my sources for a long time that lots of drugs are brought in from foreign entities through California. You're talking Pakistan, India, you're talking Peru, you're talking Colombia. Colombia's still producing people. Come on, let's not play. You're talking the Golden Triangle and Southeast Asia. They're still producing people. Come on.
Yes.
And then you have Afghanistan. So with those players producing the opium, the heroin, the opioids, and many tainted supplements and everything else that I've been hearing about coming and going, there certainly seems to be a lot of interesting biotechnology California-wise that is connected to all this. And how it's connected from there to China and back again to these people that are senators here in California. I mean, they're playing this game to the hilt. I really think that's what's going on.
Well, as this, case with the president of Honduras, not to mention our own history with prohibition shows, when you have this black market in illicit substances, sooner or later, all the politicians want to dip into it.
Did you not also hear that Pelosi's daughters were somehow involved in the MS trafficking of drugs from basically the pipeline from South America through Central America through Mexico? I mean, we know about the fiberglass
I hadn't heard
subs that.
I hadn't heard that one.
Well, it's almost like the El Camino de Real, but just remember it's the drug one instead of the gold route. Instead of de oro, it's de narco. You know what I mean? Instead of de oro, it's de narco. And, Mexico, fast and furious. Okay. I'm still waiting on some answers from Eric Holder for the deaths of probably over 20,000 people now from those weapons. And it's climbing. And the real number in Mexico in that civil war is over 175,000 people. Okay. They're just saying that this low number in the 100,000s is a very low number because, I mean, they're finding out that people are just liquefied. They're finding areas where people are just liquefied in these 55-gallon drums, not just the one that they found in Juarez and other places, but just go all the way down to the border with the Sureños border in Mexico. And you'll find those kinds of places all over. And I think Mexico is one of the most it's probably going to go into civil war if they don't clamp down. But Mike, I just don't see how it's going to work when you have a bunch of 16-year-olds that are acting as federales with automatic weapons, and you have this senior guy over them that's barely pushing 30 and saying, go chop these narcos down. And those kids are so trigger happy, And, that goes with Rocky and the Mennonites running drugs from Mexico to Canada, right through the U.S. Okay? Everybody's seen that video that Vice did about Romney and his connections to Mexico and the drug running and the opiates and God knows what else. And then you tie that with the Mennonites that just had a big old bust And then that fentanyl, that massive fentanyl bust. I think Trump is disgusted. I know I'm disgusted when I look at the industries. Trump just signed the Autism America Act. Thank you. I have an autistic son, so there's some things in there for me and my son. But I think he's done a lot to look at the alternative, and I hope to God he's real about bringing the troops home. Really, I'm serious about that. Being a former Marine myself, I've been training in mixed martial arts for 30 plus years. My mind is I see in these mixed martial arts gyms, guys and gals just trying to refine themselves after, whatever. You put the dot and the exclamation parts there. So they're PTSD. I've met them. They are so just. They're in a different world, and that they are trying to come out of that world to be healed of this. War is very damaging. I mean, it's a hell on earth. It very much is. And psychologically,
the Pentagon spends all this money to train these kids to be soldiers, and when their service is up, they don't spend a penny to help them readjust to what we would call normal life.
Exactly. They'll do it for the dogs, though, to readjust, because they have a program for that. But animals are different than human beings. We have emotions, and we have fallout derivatives, I'll call it, from let's just say if you get nailed. I met a guy that got nailed with an IED, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4. Basket Case City. I mean, super phenomenal genius with computers and yada yada yes. Functioning wise in society, it's a little bit difficult because I don't know if you've heard this, but a lot of soldiers feel like they're being followed when they get home. Have you heard that?
No, I hadn't heard that.
Followed.
That could be a symptom of the PTSDs, the paranoia.
It could be. But I've heard that from several now, so I'm kind of thinking about some things, because I do know that Obama, remember when they were running that program to take people's guns and follow soldiers around, and when they get home and when they deactivate from the service, they were doing everything they could to demonize our vets. And I just don't get it. The Democrats are the biggest pushers of war throughout the history here of the United States, but yet they're the ones that are the biggest ones that take the benefits away from the vets. And yet these dumb vets that live in these counties and cities of these Democrats aren't taking their locals to task and saying, hey, how are you living in a 6-figure house and you keep taking from the vets and making the backdoor deals and making a 10 grand here, 50 grand here? Well, shine that. How about 5 million, here or there? And the next thing you know, you see a doctor retiring. He's only, 45 years old. And how are you retiring? You don't make that kind of money at the VA. Okay? So I think that Trump needs to hang some people in the VA, literally expose them, exacerbate the situation to the point that they're so shamed that they have to go to live in the backwoods of Alaska or something, literally, and function as a hermit. That's my view of how bad. I mean, I'm a vet, and guess what? I won't go to the VA. Never have gone. I've used private my entire life. And the reason being is I am scared to death to go in that place because they do, I don't care what anybody says, I think they do organ harvesting. I think they do a lot of bad stuff in there. I think they run psyops and those things to find soldiers to put them on contractor lists. Oh, you're out? Oh, good. You don't look too banged up. You're good with the, says right here in your records, you're pretty duty hot with the M240 and good with the K-bar. Oh,
yeah.
We need to talk to you. Here's my number. Here's my card. Give me a call at this field office. How do I know? Because that's happened to me. Okay?
Yeah.
So they can play all these games like some things are hidden, but it's not hidden. They're reusing, and not letting it go. Trump has got to bring our guys and gals home. They deserve it. They deserve it.
They deserve it. They're not going to get it. They're already on their way back into Syria to steal the oil.
And isn't it interesting, Mike, that all the countries that we're in, they've been updating their military weapon paraphernalia, and yet, it takes an arm and a leg now, and hence the California 10 that sit on that intelligence board and expenditure boards. And there's some very big military bases here.
All right, well, Todd,
thanks for taking my call.
You got it. We got to take another break for commercials. Got another caller waiting on the line. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're going to go back to the phones to Slim in Canada. Aloha, Slim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Greetings and salutations, Mike. I'm calling about two. One, first of all, I'm going to do my little review on the Joker movie. The reason why the media doesn't like it is because there's not that many guns used in the movie, mostly knives and other uses, so they can't use their gun thing. And the only time he ever uses a gun is to protect himself from 3 people. So that's sort of a thing about the Joker movie that not a lot of people know about, sort of that I was going to throw out there, first of all. And
okay.
Did you want to comment on that before I continue?
Well, first of all, I'm in agreement with those who are saying that this trend of making feature films out of comic books has really gone pretty far. But as long as they continue to make money, they're going to continue to make them. I understand that this Joker movie has very little of a storyline and just a lot of gratuitous violence.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's a pretty interesting movie. I watched it. It was a lot of, it was like it shows you a lot that there's an issue with mental health and whatnot, and it sort of overdoes it. It's kind of redundant, just like Hollywood is, which is really redundant with movies these days. I mean, they're all doing remakes. But that's sort of a small thing of what I called. The reason why I called mostly is what's happening in Lebanon. As you know, there's protests happening today. We had a huge victory. The prime minister just stepped down. Now, keep in mind, you're always wondering what people should do to try and make a change. Well, if you look at what's happening in Lebanon, you'll see what real change looks like. They're peacefully holding hand to hand from one end of the country to another, made a human chain. There was protests happening. A viral video went out where there was a kid in a car, and the car was stuck between all the protesters, and the kid was crying. So a bunch of the people saw the crying kid, and they started playing the Baby Shark song for the kid. It's a viral video that came out. If people want to go watch it, it's pretty awesome. But it's a very peaceful protest. There's groups of people that wake up in the morning to clean up all the garbage in the morning because they stay up all night long. The police department is giving out sweets in the morning while the army is giving out pies and stuff like that for breakfast and stuff like it's amazing. It's great. And I would recommend that. I would wish that something similar to that would happen in North America or America, because Lebanon is 1,000 years behind us. But for this type of revolution to happen right now, it's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people to look at it.
It reminds me of the early days of the Vietnam protests, like up at Berkeley, where the protesters would bring the donuts and the cops would bring the coffee, and they'd have a peaceful protest. Then Reagan got on in and started saying we got to crack down. Anyway, Slim, need to let you go. There's the closing music.
Thanks, Mike.
So this brings to an end today's episode of our show here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please support us. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.